Title: Shadows of Drearwood, The Curse of Widow's Hollow. Chapter 1. The Journey Begins. The carriage rattled along the winding country road, the sound of hooves clopping against the cobblestones echoing through the mist-shrouded night. Inside, Jonathan Reed, a young solicitor from London, sat in silence, his thoughts consumed by the task that lay ahead. He had been sent to the remote village of Drearwood to settle the estate of a deceased client, a task he assumed would be routine. Little did he know, his journey would lead him into the heart of a darkness that had haunted the village for generations. As the carriage approached Widow's Hollow, Jonathan's eyes were drawn to the desolate landscape that stretched out before him. The village was shrouded in an eerie silence, broken only by the mournful cry of the wind as it whistled through the leafless trees. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that seemed to dance and sway with a life of their own. Chapter 2. The Haunting of Widow's Hollow. Upon his arrival, Jonathan was greeted by the locals with wary glances and whispered words. They spoke of a curse that had plagued the village for centuries, a curse that had claimed the lives of countless souls and left behind a trail of despair and destruction. They warned him to tread carefully, for the spirits that roamed the streets of Widow's Hollow were not to be trifled with. Undeterred by the tales of superstition and fear, Jonathan set about his task, determined to fulfill his duty and return to the safety of the city. But as he delved deeper into the mysteries of the village, he soon realized that there was more to Widow's Hollow than met the eye. Shadows lurked in every corner, and whispers followed him wherever he went, their words filled with malice and menace. Chapter 3. The Woman in Black. It was on a cold, moonless night that Jonathan first encountered the spirit that haunted Widow's Hollow. He was wandering through the graveyard, searching for clues to unravel the secrets of the past when he saw her standing among the tombstones. She was dressed in black, her face hidden beneath a veil, and her eyes burned with a fierce intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. As Jonathan approached, the woman in black turned to face him, her gaze piercing through the darkness like a dagger. In that moment, he felt a chill grip his heart, for he knew that he stood in the presence of something not of this world. The woman spoke in a voice that seemed to echo from the depths of the grave, her words filled with sorrow and longing. Chapter 4. The Curse Unleashed. With each passing day, Jonathan's encounters with the woman in black grew more frequent and more terrifying. She appeared to him in his dreams, her spectral form haunting his every waking moment. He tried to flee the village, to escape the clutches of the curse that held him captive, but wherever he went, she was there, a silent specter watching from the shadows. As the days turned into weeks, Jonathan's grip on reality began to slip away. He became obsessed with uncovering the truth behind the curse of Widow's Hollow, convinced that only by solving the mystery could he hope to break free from its grasp. But the more he searched, the deeper he was drawn into the darkness, until he could no longer distinguish between reality and illusion. Chapter 5. Redemption and Sacrifice. In the end, it was not through his own efforts that Jonathan found salvation, but through an act of selfless sacrifice. As he stood on the edge of Widow's Hollow, teetering on the brink of oblivion, he saw the woman in black one final time, her eyes filled with an otherworldly sadness. And in that moment, he understood the truth of her suffering, the pain that had driven her to haunt the village for centuries. With a heavy heart, Jonathan made a decision that would change the course of his fate forever. He offered himself as a sacrifice, a willing victim to appease the restless spirits that roamed the streets of Widow's Hollow. And as he surrendered to the darkness, he felt a sense of peace wash over him, knowing that he had finally found redemption in the face of unspeakable evil. Epilogue. As dawn broke over the horizon, the villagers of Widow's Hollow emerged from their homes, their faces filled with wonder and awe. For the curse that had plagued their village for generations had been lifted, the shadows banished by the light of a new day. And though Jonathan Reed was gone, his sacrifice would be remembered for eternity, a testament to the power of love and courage in the face of darkness. Title: Blood Moon over London, The Legacy of Dracula. Chapter 1. The Arrival. It was a foggy evening in London when Count Dracula stepped onto English soil, his dark silhouette looming against the backdrop of the full moon. With him, he brought an air of ancient dread, a malevolent presence that stirred the depths of the city's collective unconscious. Unbeknownst to the unsuspecting inhabitants of Victorian England, a force of unspeakable evil had arrived in their midst. As Dracula made his way through the bustling streets of London, his eyes gleamed with hunger and anticipation. He had traveled from his castle in Transylvania in search of new prey, his insatiable thirst for blood driving him ever onward. And as he moved among the throngs of unsuspecting mortals, he reveled in the chaos and despair that trailed in his wake. Chapter 2: The Hunt Begins. Jonathan Harker, a young solicitor from London, had been dispatched to Transylvania to assist Count Dracula with the purchase of an estate in England. But as he arrived at the crumbling castle that loomed ominously on the hillside, he soon realized that he was a pawn in a game far darker than he could have imagined. Trapped within the confines of Dracula's lair, Jonathan's only hope lay in escaping the clutches of the vampire and warning the world of the impending danger. Meanwhile, in London, Mina Murray awaited her fiancé's return with growing apprehension. She sensed the darkness descending upon the city, a shadowy presence that seemed to linger at the edges of her consciousness. And as reports of mysterious disappearances began to spread, she knew that Jonathan was in grave danger. Chapter 3: The Gathering Storm. As Jonathan fought for his life in the dark recesses of Dracula's castle, Mina enlisted the help of her dear friend, Lucy Westenra, and her fiancé, Arthur Holmwood, to unravel the mystery of the vampire's whereabouts. Together, they delved into the ancient lore surrounding the undead, seeking clues to Dracula's true nature and the source of his power. But their efforts were in vain, for Dracula was one step ahead of them at every turn. He moved through the shadows with supernatural grace, his hypnotic gaze ensnaring the hearts and minds of his victims. And as the nights grew longer and the moon waxed full, the streets of London ran red with the blood of the innocent. Chapter 4: The Final Confrontation. As the vampire's grip tightened around the city, Mina and her companions raced against time to stop him before it was too late. Armed with knowledge gleaned from ancient texts and the wisdom of Van Helsing, a renowned vampire hunter, they tracked Dracula to his lair beneath the streets of London. With stakes in hand and hearts filled with resolve, they descended into the depths of the city, prepared to face the horrors that awaited them. And as they confronted Dracula in his inner sanctum, a fierce battle ensued, the echoes of their struggle reverberating through the darkness. In the end, it was Mina who delivered the final blow, driving a stake through the vampire's heart and releasing the city from his malevolent grasp. As Dracula crumbled to dust before their eyes, a sense of peace descended upon London once more, the legacy of the vampire vanquished by the bravery of those who dared to stand against the darkness. Epilogue. In the years that followed, the legend of Count Dracula would be passed down through the generations, a cautionary tale of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. But though the vampire had been defeated, his legacy would live on in the hearts and minds of those who had witnessed his reign of terror. And as the sun rose on a new day,